Growing up as a kid, I had many game consoles over the years, but my very first true gaming console I ever had the pleasure of playing as a kid was the Atari 2600. In this episode of Retro Docs, we're going to talk about the history of the Atari 2600. The year is 1972, and Nolan Bushnell and Ted Dabney got together and founded one of the most recognizable retro gaming companies in history, Atari, and together they created the first successful coin-operated game, Pong. Just 1 year later, they had taken Pong to the next level by making it their first home console, competing with Magnavox. September of that same year, MOS Technology debuted their first 6502 microprocessor at the Westcom trade show in San Francisco for $25, and was met by Atari about using it on a console, but soon realized that even at $25 it was not financially possible, so they decided to go with a more cost-effective 6507 microprocessor, adding on a Riot chip as well for a total cost of about $12. December of 1975, Atari hired Joe DeCure, a recent UC Berkeley graduate who was working on testing the chip on his own and developing a prototype of his own called Project Stella. His first prototype had a breadboard level design for graphics. A second prototype was then developed in 1976 that had a newer chip called the Television Interface Adapter, or TIA, which then also included the 6507 microprocessor and a ROM cartridge slot and an adapter. Then they added one final person to help develop it more and define what consumer issues needed to be addressed before the actual launch, and that was Gene Landrum, who was also consulting on the upcoming Fairchild Channel F. He had told them that the console should look like it would fit in living rooms, so it was given that nice wood grain look, and the cartridges needed to be idiot-proof, child-proof, and static resistant. The first official launch of the Atari 2600 was at the Consumer Electronics Show in 1977, with an official retail launch later in October. However, it was delayed a bit since they were still waiting on a lawsuit they had with Magnavox and dealing with technical issues as well. Final release of the Atari VCS was in September of 1977. The price for the Atari VCS was about $199. That's about $850 in today's money. Back then it came with 2 joysticks and 1 cartridge, Combat, with Atari selling 350 million to 400 million units in 1977. However, by the time the console was doing good, 2 more consoles soon came out to compete with it. Those were the Mattel Intellivision and the Magnavox Odyssey. Even though Atari had help from third-party developers with pushing out more and more games, they soon had yet another competitor with ColecoVision, who was given the rights by Nintendo to port their hit arcade game Donkey Kong to their system. However, Atari had tried to get back their market dominance by yet porting more and more games to their system, but at a great cost to quality. Take Pac-Man, for example, that had many technical and graphical issues even though it sold over 10 million copies. And they tried to capitalize on the movie E.T. by releasing a game based on the movie in just 6 weeks, expecting it to sell well. But with poor reviews causing the game to sell less than expected, it didn't work out. However, in September of 1983, Atari sent truckloads of unsold cartridges and parts to a landfill in New Mexico, which was once thought to be a gaming urban legend. However, in 2014, the site was actually excavated and it was found out to be true. Even though the Atari 2600 was riddled with issues and had some pretty notable bad games, with Pac-Man and E.T. for example, there are some games for the system that were in my mind pure classics, and here are some of my favorites: Jungle Hunt, Pitfall, Demons to Diamonds, and Space Invaders. The legacy of the Atari 2600 has been in the memory of gamers young and old, with those who remember playing it as a kid and then showing it to their kids. And with clones like all-in-ones like the Atari Flashback that allows people to relive playing the games without buying cartridges, as well as legacy games coming out for more modern gaming consoles. And now onto my final thoughts. The Atari 2600 is one of the most well-known of the retro gaming consoles. Yes, it had its ups and downs and will soon become a long-forget memory with more and more newer consoles coming out year after year, and a history of games that were classics and those that are just god-awful. If you had one of these back in the day, let me know down in the comments. I'm Paul saying peace out and stay frosty.